or developers who aren't able to do that, it just makes working together a little bit harder, especially when you're trying to explain and they're like, well, I'm the developer, I'm coding it.
Coming at you, about to teach you a lesson. When it comes to code, you know he's never guessing. So if you think you want to learn to go and code things, get on up to Lesson on Coding.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Lesson on Coding podcast. My name is Ryan Lesson. So in today's episode, boy, do we have a good one for you today. We're going to do something a little bit different today, because today I'm not going to be bringing on a coder, but I'm going to bring on someone who's working in a field that's just as important, and devs should learn how to collaborate more with them. It's a good friend of mine. She's a designer, and her name is Sarah. So without any further ado, let's bring her on. Sarah, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks for being on.
Love to be here.
Yeah. So how do you feel about Texas lately? It's feeling more like Michigan as, you know, this winter keeps going on. It's freezing. There's no sun. What's going on?
I don't know. I mean, it's been pretty dreary. Lots of rain, lots of gray skies, and I'm just ready for sunshine to come back. So.
Yeah, I thought, in Texas, spring starts like right when March hits, but I guess not this year, huh?
Yeah, last year was definitely better. My birthday's in March, so it's an exciting month for me, and I'm always looking for that good 70s weather, and we just haven't had it yet this month.
I know. When's pool season starting?
I know. I'm ready for it.
Me too. So Sarah and I, we've worked together. Her and I found out we have a lot in common. We're both from Michigan, and we both went to Michigan State, but we didn't really know each other till we met and we worked on a project together. So we had a lot in common, and we were talking about a whole bunch of different things. And I thought she would be, since she's so, outgoing and gregarious herself, I thought she would be perfect to have on just to talk about, design and kind of do a deeper dive in that and how important it is in the roles of, building apps and so many different things on the web. So, let's just get right down to it. So, you went to Michigan State. How does someone get into what you do in designing, at Michigan State? Because I know there's probably not really courses on how they teach that there.
Yeah, so actually at Michigan State, I started out as an advertising major, and I felt like that was much more business focused than I wanted. So I started taking fine art classes. So I did a lot of 3-hour drawing, painting, and that felt more up my alley, but it still wasn't enough technology and computers that I wanted to be working with. So that's actually when I moved to Texas. So I moved down here and I started at Abilene Christian. Mm-hmm. And their design department is actually really well known. They've had multiple designers come out of that now work in New York and have really well known work they've worked on McDonald's campaigns and just huge artists. That's awesome to kind of have that legacy of they have people coming out of it. So when I was there, they actually have multiple classes for design for websites, and I made sure that I was taking all the courses that I could related to that. And like I said, it's a really good program for design, so they really kind of make sure that you know what you're doing and that your designs look nice, but also function well and people can use them. Gotcha.
So finding your first job, did this come through Abilene Christian?
It did.
Okay, gotcha. I want to talk about kind of how they placed you within it and how maybe you were, did you have any work, a portfolio you had to build or something like that?
Yeah, so one of our final classes as seniors is a portfolio design class. And from that class, what comes out of it is having a portfolio with it. You take 2 job interviews. And I actually had a friend from ACU that recommended me and said, hey, we have this position open. We think you'd be great for it. So I interviewed for it and ended up getting the position. And with that, they taught me a lot more about user experience. So graduating, I had a BFA, and my specialty was focused in website design, but that's different from UX. So my first job really taught me a ton about user experience, and that's kind of where I made the shift into thinking more about how people use websites and the situations that they're going to be in. They're not always going to have a computer. A lot of it is mobile, and so we do learn to design for mobile first. Then adapt it for larger screens because it's a lot easier to work that way as opposed to, we designed it for web, which is 1,400 pixels, and then having to shift it down to 320, 360.
Gotcha. So here's a question for you. For me personally, I went to a boot camp for more software development. I learned software development at Michigan State, but the bulk of my, learning and bulk of me, understanding, deep understanding of different technologies came through the hands-on work experience. Would you say that was for you too?
Yeah, absolutely. I
Gotcha,
think that you
gotcha.
learn a lot more when you're actually into that position of how do I do this, as compared to doing it for schoolwork where you're not really in the moment, you're not under the same pressure. So I think that you have to learn a lot quicker, but it's also an awesome learning opportunity and the same thing.
Oh, definitely. So, like, what online resources are there out there? So, like, for me, I've dabbled with Sketch before. Like, sometimes, like, I'll play the designer when I'm trying to build an app at home, and I'll sketch, do some sketches. But what, let's say someone is not in school, they want to kind of look into this. Where would be some good online resources that maybe you've used to become learn about this stuff?
Specific to design, there's a lot of like design inspiration websites. So, like there's UI Machine. There's one that's called literally Design Inspiration. So there's a lot of inspiration websites that I look at. They don't necessarily teach you about design, but by looking at good design, it helps inform you of, wow, like that looks nice. I can maybe replicate it in a sense.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard that replication is like the sincerest form of flattery. So in design, I think that definitely comes into play. I also have worked with like Coding Tree and Code Academy. As a designer, it's really important to understand a basic level, kind of like a face value level of coding, just so you know what you're designing is actually feasible and you're not giving the developers something that they're like, we can't do this. This is totally far out and impossible for us at the current moment. And including things that maybe it's a future state where this is like the ideal, this is awesome, we want this, but what's the steps to get there? How do we start? What are the baby steps that we take to get to that ideal state?
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. So, quick question, like, how long have you been doing this professionally for?
I've been designing for 5 years now professionally.
Very cool, very cool. So, I'm going to bring this up because you just kind of touched on this. You said you want to know limitations of what the devs could do, which I totally agree with. But you did come to me one time when we were on a project and you were like, oh, we wanted to make this cool calendar. And you're like, oh, I didn't know if you guys could do this. And I was like, Sarah, come on. We could do this. Do you ever, clash between devs within where like you'll be like, oh, like this is what I really want, but is there limitations to, my creativity that the devs wouldn't be able to, make it feasible and make it a tangible thing?
Absolutely. Especially with the current projects that I'm on, a lot of the things that we think of are super future forward.
Ooh.
In the sense of, can this machine think for itself and put in a request for, hey, I'm out of batteries. Can you order new batteries for me? And so thinking of that like super future forward aspect of it, a lot of times, like I said, we have to dial our thoughts back and be like, okay, what's the right now level of this? How do we get to that? And a lot of times it's easier to go to the developers and say, okay, this is what we want in the future. How do we get there? Is this possible? What do we need to do to get it there? Or if it's totally not possible, if it's like way too future forward, to say, okay, well then what's feasible? Like what's the lower level that's still cool but is manageable? We can get there.
Gotcha. Very cool. Yeah, and I totally agree with that because I know thoughts could be so far in the future and you're like, oh, I need to see this, but there's definitely limitations and that's awesome that you're very mindful of that. So you're a very busy woman lately. Let's talk about, kind of your current role. What are you doing? Why are you so busy? I mean, you were just telling me when we were just talking outside that you've been so busy lately. So you're working full time and you're in a master's program, correct?
I am, that's correct.
Yeah, so why don't you kind of touch on both of those?
Yeah, so right now in my current position, I am a senior UX designer. With that, I am currently working on one main project and then there's a secondary project, but it's less intensive. So my main project is for hospitals, and in that we are working on a system that makes it easier for hospitals to buy capital equipment. A lot of times right now what happens is the doctor will say, hey, I want this, go and get it. And the hospital kind of scrambles based on budgets and a lot of limitations that they have regardless or in relation to that product. And usually they have contracts with maybe like GE or Samsung where it's like, okay, we already work with these companies and how can we get the product cheaper because we already have a contract with them. And a doctor might not necessarily be mindful of that. They might say, hey, we really want this machine. We don't care what contracts we have. Go get it. And that really influences budgets in a hospital. And so the system that we're working on is allowing doctors and nurses and whoever might be putting in a request to say, hey, this is what I want. Do we have a contract with them? Do we have the budget for it? Is it going to be possible for us to get it? So that it kind of reworks the way that the system is and allows hospitals to stay on budget and actually be mindful of their costs.
Very cool, yeah. And I know the med space, because I have a good friend who's a doctor, actually, and he's been telling me that technology is starting to play a more and more big role within the medical field. I mean, honestly, you're kind of, you could be saving lives.
Absolutely, yeah. And
it's crazy, isn't it?
It's amazing to think about, like, if this gets to market and goes to multiple hospitals, the way that it's really going to influence the entire market, because hospitals are huge. Like, the money that they bring in every single year and have to expense is insane.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
So just having the idea of, like, how can we make this easier for them to save money, and how can that, and on the other hand, save lives, because we are saving money so we can take in more people and give them proper care. So that's really interesting. Cool. So secondly, like I said, I'm also in a master's program.
Yeah, how do you find the time to do that is what I want to ask you.
So I only have classes 2 days a week, which is nice. And my previous semesters, half of my classes were online. So that made it easier. I could manage my time a little differently since it was online. But the ones that this semester, I have Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I go to work, and then at about 3 o'clock I leave, and I go to class from 4 to 7. And then after class I work out.
Nice.
So that's usually my day-to-day. On the other days I'm just working and then usually doing homework after work when I get home. But it's really just making sure that you are balancing your time, and if there's ever that moment where you're sitting down and you're like, oh, I just want to, like, rest and, like, chill, and you're just like, I can't, like, I need to be doing something because I always have work to do or homework to do. So
yeah, so I mean, wow, yeah. Well, you definitely are starting to perfect time management. So here's a question I have for you. So within engineering spaces, a lot of the times I hear from people is there's pushback on getting, continued education. And the reasons being because you could find it all online now. Like, there's all these free resources. Like, you could, why spend all this money to do this instead of, maybe finding on YouTube for free or something like that. So what, prompted you to want to take this route instead of, being able to find it all online or, stuff like that?
Yeah, so my master's program is in human-computer interaction, and that ties into design because it's more psychology-based, so it's kind of, how are people using this? What are they thinking about? What are their motivations? How are they influenced by color or by the usability? All of those things come into play psychologically. So human-computer interaction really focuses on that. And, sorry, I just lost my train of thought in regards to your question.
What prompted you to want to go into this master? Because again, like you just touched on, it's different than what you're doing at work. It more ties in the psychology of everything.
Yeah. So as I was working my first position, I was constantly like, wow, this is really interesting, and, like, I'm more motivated by understanding other people's motivations and the way that they work. And that, yes, I could have used online resources, but it didn't feel as validated as going to a master's program and moving forward in life and people being able to say, oh, like, you went to college for it, you got a degree for it.
Yeah.
They can't really take that away from you. Like, it is validated.
It's with you for life, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's an experience that they can't say, oh, you just learned it online. Like, we don't know where you learned it from. We don't know, like, how valid it is or how much we can actually stand behind that.
Absolutely,
so
yeah.
That was really my motivation of, we're going to do a master's program.
Awesome.
We're going to jump in.
Well, it sounds like you're killing it.
I hope so.
It does sound like you're killing it. So since you've been in the industry for so long, you're doing all these courses, I want to ask you, what have you learned about UX that most people wouldn't know? Like, what have you learned to look for? What have you learned to accommodate for, for accessibility and stuff like that? Can you give us just, like, a few things that maybe you've personally have, discovered on your own or just through different, maybe different means or whatever?
The first thing I thought of was the way that, like, where buttons are placed or just the look of a button can really influence where, like, how many people are using it or whether they are going to click it or not. Secondly, it's funny, but you learn that the pictures that are used on a website actually really influence a person.
I bet,
if there's a picture of a puppy on a website, it's, like, 90% more likely to be clicked, which is, like, funny, right? Like, people, like, the way that people function and what they're influenced by, it's really interesting. In addition to that, I think that UX, I'm trying to, like, think of things like I always think of designs in relation to my parents or like my grandparents, and I try to imagine them using it.
Oh yeah,
And
I can imagine.
Yeah, that always helps because if you're making something super future forward or just you're like, oh, is this intuitive or not? I always try to think, what would my mom look like trying to use this? Or what would my grandparents look like trying to use this? And that really helps think about the other people that are using it, like the different audiences and whether or not they're actually going to be able to figure it out. And so that definitely helps you like dial it back into, yes, this is going to be usable, this is going to be clear for people, and it really just having that mindset of other people and the way that they're going to use it is super important to consider.
Absolutely. So have you used eye tracking software at all?
I have. It's really cool to work with. It does take a time to...
Could you back up and kind of tell everyone what that is, if you don't mind?
The software.
Yeah, like eye tracking. Like, how does that help you and like what it is?
Yeah, so the eye tracking software that we used was called Moray, and we use it in order to understand what are hotspots on a page. Where are people's eyes drawn? Because when you're working in a design, there's going to be things that are way more interesting for people. And you also might have people that aren't interested in that. Like, people have different motivations. So there's going to be specific tracks of the way that people's eyes move. So there's one pattern, it's called an F pattern, where you might have a left-handed side of filters, or that's where your menu is instead of a top menu. So using eye tracking can really help you understand whether people are looking at that left-hand side, or if they are looking top menu, they're looking for that typical pattern of where a menu is, and looking around that top or kind of in the middle, and that's how it makes an F, like whether they look on the side, the top, or the middle. So really just understanding like what is attracted or what is attracting people's eyes.
Yeah.
That's where the eye tracking comes into play.
Was that how you kind of found out that people are attracted to puppies, like images of puppies? Yeah, very cool.
And I mean puppies and faces, like people are 100% drawn to faces on a website.
Yeah, it's crazy. The science behind all that is insane. What was I just going to ask you? Give me a second. I lost my train of thought too. Just getting too deep, but give me a second. So why don't we touch on, so I wanted to talk to you about health, but I also want to kind of bring it back. And since this is more of a coding podcast, like lesson on coding, I wanted to bring in collaboration with developers. Like per se, so here's a situation I want to talk to you about, and I've seen it. It hasn't happened to me, but I've seen it. You know, I was at Microsoft working, and I saw, you know, so-and-so interaction between, you know, designers and developers. And honestly, the collaboration was kind of like, oh, I don't like this, I don't like this. So how do you feel? Like, for example, you give me, you know, like you give me basically, you know, designs for a website or whatever, an app. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, you know, like this color you're using, I don't like this color. And why, you know, but like me telling you that, it's like, you know, it's like equivalent to like telling a doctor, like, oh, like you're using this medicine, like you should be using this medicine. So how do you as a designer deal with, you know, when that comes up, and how do you think we can improve, you know, kind of the collaboration? Because I mean, we have to coexist, because I mean, this is how beautiful software gets made.
So I haven't necessarily experienced that, but I do work with a lot of developers that do have opinions, and I always think it's valid to include their opinion or to say, okay, like, where's that coming from? Or, you know, maybe why don't you like this color? Can you tell me a little bit more about that? I think it's really important to not just say, okay, well, you're not the designer, like, I'm the designer, and to, like, kind of let that ego go, because a lot of times you're also working with a color palette that you didn't choose. So if you were saying, hey, I don't really like this color, like, it's like, okay, well, that's the company's color. I don't really have a say over what the color is. I'm just using it in this location. But like I said, I think it's really important to say, okay, well, where is that coming from? Can you tell me a little bit more? Maybe we can figure this out between the two of us. Secondly, a lot of the developers that I do work with right now have an interest in design. And so they're typically wanting to learn a little bit from me, and the same that I'm wanting to learn a little bit from them. So that conversation of, well, I don't really like this color, I'm not sure about the way that you're using this, like, I think it helps both of us to have that conversation and to figure it out and work between us. Gotcha.
Well, it's amazing that you do that, because I know some people, you know, like, for example, you've been studying it forever, you know, I've been studying it for a good time, you know, software and stuff like that. So, like, if someone out of the industry comes to you and says, hey, like, oh, I don't like how that code's written, maybe just because it could be, written a different way.
Yeah.
Some people, they go so crazy over that, like, oh, you're telling me how to do this? Like, I've been studying this. And you're so right that you need to have empathy and understand where that person is coming from, and you need to collaborate with them. So I definitely agree with that. I mean, that's huge. Other things I want to ask just with collaboration in general, does developers need to cross over more in design, you think? Or designers need to cross more into being coders? Or do you think, like, just in general, each person should be well-versed in both?
I would say it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
I mean, I work with other designers who don't necessarily have a design background, but are very passionate about it. And I try to mentor them to have that empathy of, look, we can work with the developers, and it can be a two-way street where they are helping us and we're helping them, and to really let your ego go. Because, I mean, it's definitely a thing that happens in the design world. People are very into their designs and very proud of them. I think it's a two-way street because of the fact that if I understand a little bit more about code, it informs my designs and it makes it easier for us to work together.
Oh, yeah.
In the same token that if you know a little bit about design, you can say, hey, I'm working on this code and it's not working perfectly, but I think that we could make this small change and we can do this and it's going to work just as well as your original design. And so for you to have like that knowledge and to come to me and say like, hey, I think maybe we can make it work this way, is the same as me saying, I have a little bit of knowledge, so I designed it this way so that it's feasible. And it's important to be able to kind of cross across that. Because if you have developers who aren't able to do that, it just makes working together a little bit harder, especially when you're trying to explain and they're like, well, I'm the developer, I'm coding it, I'm the one who has this knowledge. And they tend to kind of disregard any slight knowledge you have just because of the fact that because they have more knowledge than you do.
And that could be so detrimental to so many different things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah, thanks for the insight. So let's move on to like what trends do you see in the industry? Like you touched on before, everything's mobile now. Everything is built mobile first. What do you see in the next, let's just say 5 years as the new thing within designing? Do you see it more being, actually, I wouldn't even know how to answer that. I was hoping you could help me out with that question.
Yeah.
What do you see kind of like the next 5 years the industry moving into?
Yeah, so I read a lot of books to try to keep myself informed about where trends might be going. One of the things that I recently read is if you think about Alexa or Echo Dot or any of those of audio experiences that people have or people use in their home, a lot of things are going to be moving kind of in that direction where we think of designs less of an interface that you're going onto and you're clicking around or you're buying something, and more of I live in this experience and it makes my life easier. It makes things easier to do. And so, like I said, that it's not necessarily that we're designing things for people to see. It's we're designing things that people use and people experience. Just like I said, Alexa, like it's a different type of experience, but it's still designed.
Oh, absolutely. And
people still works on that.
People don't even think that. But You're so right about that. Yeah.
100% miss it. And there's a quote that I try to keep in mind all the time that good design is invisible. And that's one of those things where it's like you really don't think about the fact that somebody worked on this, somebody designed it, so that when somebody asks a question, it's easy for the machine to give an answer and it feels like a conversation, and that was designed that way on purpose. So yeah, I see things more moving so into this is always an experience where it's helping make our lives easier and it's automating a lot of things for us.
Very cool, yeah. Awesome. So let's segue into kind of the last part of this. And I think this is extremely important as well. So we kind of talked about the industry, talked about trends, talked about all that, but I know you're very into health and fitness. I am as well. As an engineer, you're sitting down all day. I see people sitting down. They drink a ton of caffeine, through sodas and things like that. They're not eating well. They're not, being mindful of what they're putting into their body. And so like someone like you, who's very, avid into fitness is like, how do you stay, healthy? Like what are some tips or I guess just share some things you do to, keep your body in top shape?
Yeah. So, probably kind of surprising, but I actually don't drink caffeine.
Oh, whoa.
Yes. I've read a lot of articles about the way that caffeine changes your sleep cycle. And as soon as you intake caffeine, it makes it harder to go to sleep. And then when you wake up, you're tired, so you drink more caffeine. And it's just this round and round cycle of basically you're always tired. So I don't drink caffeine. I will admit that I'm not a morning person, so sometimes it makes it hard. But that's one of the tips that I think that people easily over intake caffeine and then get into that cycle where they just really can't get themselves out. So that's one thing. Like you said, we're sitting a lot of the day, so we do have stand-up desks, and I try to be mindful about how often I'm sitting and how often I'm standing. I also have an Apple Watch, so that usually tells me to get up and move around, and you know, that helps. I also, like I said, I work out after class, and I try to do yoga once or twice a week, and that really just kind of helps me like get away from all of the things that I do daily and kind of leave it behind and be in like this Zen period of just breathing and like feeling your body and like the energy that you have. So that's another way that I try to be healthy. Like I said, I do work out. I've always been a runner, so that's my biggest form of cardio. And I lift weights. Like I have a workout room in my apartment, so I tend to use that if I'm not on campus and I can't use their gym. Before I was doing my master's program, I did also do CrossFit. And I think that exercise in itself is just something that I've always been motivated by and I personally enjoy. I know that's not true for everybody. I know that not everybody is a runner, so I'm not saying, you know, get into running. If you hate running, don't do it. Like, find the things that you really find enjoyable and make that a habit.
Yeah, I think the two things you touched on is standing up more and avoiding tons of caffeine. Well, not all caffeine. Like, I can't even say avoid all caffeine. Like, I have a cup of coffee right over there. You know, what I kind of want to ask you is, well, what I preach is to work your best, you need to have your body running your best. So for me, that's like I want to put the best food in my body. And once I do that, I get in the best mind state. And then, like, you know, sitting down and coding all day is not hard for me to do. It's something I call boosters. And basically what they are is like, you know, sometimes people will be like, oh, I need to take a bunch of caffeine, or, oh, I need to, like, I guess have a bunch of nicotine or a bunch of Adderall, and that'll put me in a state where then I could go work. And I see so many people in the industry do that. Like, they'll be like, oh, I need 3 Mountain Dews before I even look at code. And you just get in so many bad habits doing that. It's just crazy. And I think it's just so, so important that even you have ways to do it, and especially with your busy schedule.
Yeah.
Like you said, you're working, then you're going to class, and then you still make time for it.
I mean, you have to make it a priority. I think that your body is, you know, it's your body. It's going to keep you around. So,
absolutely, yeah.
I also try to keep in mind that a body in motion stays in motion. You know, my parents were not very active, and not that they're unhealthy, but they were never really like runners, or, I mean, my dad played hockey, but that's it. But that just really like changed my mindset of don't just sit on the couch and watch TV all the time. Like, you got to be up and like moving, and the more that you're moving, you're going to feel better, just because this is what our body's meant to do.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
We're meant to move. We're not meant to sit 12 hours, 8 hours a day. Like, that's just really not what we're meant for. So I think it's really important to stay active and to keep your body running in a healthy way, like you said. And using boosters, I don't think it's
I see it so much.
Sustainable way of life. So
yeah, you're totally right. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for coming on, Sarah. I really
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Thank
It was a
you for
great
having me.
conversation.
It was great.
So yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. This was our 3rd episode. Be sure to follow me on YouTube at Lesson on Coding. Follow me on Instagram at Lesson on Coding. Subscribe to me and like this video on YouTube at Lesson on Coding. And that's all for us today. Thank you, guys. Take care.